is equal to document, or in this case, I'll use the query selector, and then the class for my color was color. So I'll use this one. Okay, good. Now let's set up the event listener for click events. So I'm gonna have my BTN add event listener, and then I'll be listening for my click events. And then of course in here, I'll pass in my callback function, which in my case is just gonna be an animus function. And then within the function body, this is where I would want to set up my logic. So each and every time I'm gonna click on a button, I'll change the background color for my body. And that is actually going to be our first task. How are we going to target the body? Well, since we know that the body is the property on a document object, and in order to show you that, I'm just going to console log it, document body. And then if we check out our DevTools, we'll see that in the console, we have our body. Awesome. So now I know how I can target my body. What's next? Well, I would want to use the style property and more specifically background color property and change that value. And of course, I'll start doing that just by manually accessing my items from the array. So in this case, I'm going to go with const, then a random number, and I'm just going to set it equal to number 2. Now I would want to add the comment where our goal is to get a number. So let's write here comment get random number between. We know that arrays are 0 index based, correct? So this is going to be our first item, and that will have the index of 0. So if I would need to select it, I would do something along the lines of colors, and then I'll be selecting the 0. So that's how I can get my first item. If I would want the second one, I would have here 1, 2, and then 3. That's why our goal is to get a random number between 0 and 3. Okay, it's good to know our goals, but for the time being, we'll just have it as a hard-coded value of 2. And then, like I said, we'll use our document object, then we'll look for the body, then style property, not styles, style, and then more specifically, the background color as this value in the properties. And of course, you can see that Visual Studio Code is giving me nice suggestions. And for the time being, we'll set it up to a colors. So of course, that is my array, and I'll use my random number. So I'll use my hard-coded value of t. And then also Also, I would want to select my color. And why I'm selecting the color? Because I would want to change the value here as well. I want to select is my hard-coded value of D. And then also I would want to select my color. And why I'm selecting the color? Because I would want to change the value here as well. So I would want to display which is actually the background color for my body. And property for that is text content. And again, we'll do the same thing. Colors, and then we'll have a random number. Let's save it. And then, of course, the moment I'll click on my button, you'll see that I'll access my third item because, of course, I'm using the index number 2. And then, of course, I can refresh because I'll click have a random number. Let's save it. And then, of course, the moment I'll click on my button, you'll see that I'll access my third item because, of course, I'm using the index number 2. And then, of course, I can refresh. And I'll do the same thing. So all of this is nice and dandy, but how we can actually make this more interesting, where we'll get a random number from our array? Well, I guess we could start by setting up some kind of function that will generate that number between 0
हाँ भाई, हाँ सर, बस कुछ नहीं, थोड़ा सा कोडिंग कर रहा हूँ। अरे क्या टॉपर भाई, टाइम पास कर रहा हूँ भाई मैं। तू बता। हैं? अच्छा, कौन तू और साक्षात? अरे नाइस नाइस, कब से खेल रहे हो? अच्छा अच्छा, 8 साढ़े 8 से खेल रहे हो? नाइस भाई, सही है। क्या प्रोग्रेस करी? अच्छा 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 अच्छा, सही है सही है। क्या सोएगा क्या जल्दी आज? ओह ओके ओके ओके, मेक सेंस। सही है सही है, बढ़िया है। और बता। बस बढ़िया था। सब तो क्या मतलब, बस सीएन की अभी तक सबमिट हुई है, एमएल की और प्रोफेशनल इलेक्टिव्स की बच रही है। रिपोर्ट तो बन गई है, बट वही प्रिंट करा के देनी है बस। तो वही मंडे को करूँगा। तेरा क्या सीन है? सारे हो गए क्या? बढ़िया बढ़िया बढ़िया, सही है यार। हाँ हाँ हाँ, वही वही। मेरे भी ऑल क्या, मैथ्स और एफएलए के तो सब सारे मार्क्स चढ़ गए, बाकी अभी बच रहे हैं इसके इसके अपने हैं। अरे भाई, हमारे तो इन दो के तो चढ़ ही गए, बट मेन चीज अब वही बच रही है, एमएल की। हाँ चेक करियो एमएल का। अरे एमएल की तो रिपोर्ट सही है। कितने बने? क्या मार्क्स काट दिया ज्यादा? हैं? फक, इतने क्या काट दिए भाई इसने? तेरा सीट? अरे, कि ये वो फिर चढ़ा रहा होगा मैं मार्क्स अभी। 10 एज इन ये शायद वो होगा, एक क्विज होगा तेरा, लास्ट वाला शायद। एक बार पूछ, हाँ एक बार उससे पूछियो कि सर ये वाले कंपोनेंट में जीरो चढ़े हैं। मोस्टली तो आई थिंक उसने चढ़ाए नहीं होंगे अभी तक। आई थिंक सो, क्योंकि नहीं नहीं, आता है अभी। जैसे बीच में जब मेरे चढ़े नहीं थे तो दो दो क्या कहते हैं, दो उसमें जीरो जीरो लगे हुए थे, मतलब मैं देख रहा था। फिर बाद में उसने जब मैसेज डाला तब वो अपडेट हुआ था। तो मे बी उस बंदे ने या तो न चढ़ाए हो या क्या हो, पता नहीं। उससे पूछना पड़ेगा। हम्म हम्म, अरे भाई, हाँ वही वही, हाँ वही 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 मैं बोल रहा था नहीं भाई। इट्स जस्ट कि वो बंदा उस टाइम पे किया नहीं होगा वायरलेस। सही है सही है सही है। कोई ना, बढ़िया है बढ़िया बढ़िया है। कोई ना, सही है। सोच भाई, एकदम सैबोटेज कर जाते रहे उसने। या भाई, तेरा एमएल का वो भेजेगा मेरे को एक बार रिपोर्ट, क्योंकि भाई मेरे पास वो नहीं है। और क्या बोलो, बस दो ही रिपोर्ट सबमिशन बाकी हैं, एमएल का और उसका। बाकी सब तो सब डाल दिया भाई। और क्या? और सुना। हाँ 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 हाँ, अच्छा कल भी आता। ऐसा है क्या? किनके साथ खेल रहा है? सही है सही है सही है, हाँ सही है। सही है सही है, बढ़िया यार। नाइस, सही है भाई। है ना? चल ठीक है सॉरी। हाँ हाँ, देखा देखा। चलो ओके यार, बाय।
and 3. And I'll call this function get random number. So I'm just going to go here with a function keyword, then get random number. Now I'll not accept any parameters, but I will return from my function a math random method. I will invoke and go here with get random number. So that is, of course, my function. I'm just invoking my get random function. And then since I would want to show you what kind of values we'll be getting, I'll go with console log right underneath my random number, and I'll just check what is the value I'm getting. So random number. That's what I would want to console log. And of course, the moment I'll click, you'll notice that at the moment I'm not getting anything because I'm getting this weird 0.57 and whatever, all these values after the dot. And what is happening with a math random, we are getting numbers, unique numbers from 0 all the way to 1, but it's never going to be 1. So it's always going to be between 0 and then 0.99999 something. And okay, but as you can see, it doesn't really do much good since, of course, there is no item with this type of index. So again, we're looking for numbers between 0 and 3. And one thing that we could do is make it interesting and multiply with the length of our colors. So what is that going to give me? Well, that is going to give me numbers between 0 point something and then 3 point something. Because keep in mind, our length is 4, of course, correct? We have 1, 2, 3, 4 items at the moment. Of course, if you'll add more items, you'll have bigger length. But at the moment, our length is 4. So we're just multiplying the random number we're getting by 4. And then since I said that we'll be getting these random numbers between our value when I'm multiplicating these numbers, notice, like I said, it's going to be from 0 point something all the way up to 3. Point something. Now, of course, in our case, it doesn't get there. I can keep on clicking, and yes, there it is, 3.06. Now, how we can fix this right now? Well, the solution would be using another method that is on a math object, and that is a floor one. So what floor is doing, it is going to round down to a closest as far which in round 0 or and then we'll pass the value that we'll place it in the parentheses. I will sing my third item. Then if I'm going to click one more time, then of course I'm going to be getting the value of 1, seeing the first part of our project. Now let me test it out on a smaller screen. Let's see how it's going to exact. Now what we'll do is each and every time we'll click on a button is happening. Notice that as I'm and just a warning, some of the moment we'll click on a button, we will generate a random hex color. Now, of course, the moment, as you can see, nothing is happening. But if I'll check it out, the complete project, the hex color one, you'll notice that as I'm clicking, I'm generating a unique color. You click the same random. We will not, in order to speed things up, if you'll check it out, the hex HTML, you'll notice that I already created the setup for you. And again, this just saves us time of repeating the same HTML. Now you'll notice also that the color is the same, the BTN ID is the same. The only difference is that we will use the hex.js. So in the index, but then in this case, in the hex HTML, we're pointing to hex.js, where we'll set up our functionality to pick a hex color. And again, the reason why I set up the HTML already for you, so you don't have to retype the same thing like we already did for the simple one. So I'll close my sidebar. I don't think I need the app.js or index.html. Like I said, there's going to be a little bit of repetition, but not too much. And I'll start by, again, selecting my button. And if you'd want, you can copy and paste from the app.js. That's up to you. But I'm just going to retype it. So I'm going to go with document, then get element by ID. Again, I'm looking for the same button, copy and paste. And now, of course, I'm going to be looking for the color. So I'm going to go color. Now, this is not going to be get element by ID, even though maybe we could have practiced. Maybe I could have renamed it, but I mean, it is what it is. So query selector, I'm going to go with a color. And now, of course, course, I would also want to change in my small browser window. What am I seeing? So now I'm going to have my hex project. And then again, we'll add a event listener for our button. So btn, add event listener. We'll be listening for our click events. And then we'll have our callback function. So function here. And then we'll do the same thing with a random number, but the setup is going to be a little bit different. Now, how we can generate a random hex color and why we would want that. So 0 to 9. And then we have letters that would represent 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15. And again, a typical example of the hex color would be something like this. This is my favorite orange color. And as you see, I'm starting with an F, which would be 15. And then I'm getting 1, 5, 0 to 5. And this is exactly what we'll do, where we'll set up a loop that will generate this hex color on the fly. And then, of course, again, we'll target the body, change the color for the background of the body, and then also add the value within the color span. And within the function body, let's start creating a hex value. And I'll start by setting it equal to